Our second winner is a 1989 alumnus from the PGDM program. Sunil Bhatia has had an extremely interesting career, and I'll just hit a few highlights. Like many, he worked at Accenture and IBM, and never compete with background music. All right, okay. So a little bit about Sunil. Having worked at Accenture and IBM, in which case one would look at it as a fairly typical post-PGDM kind of a life. His life took a little bit of a turn. He took a little bit of a risk, and he basically then joined Blue Star Infotech. Not necessarily as name brand a company as the others. And within Blue Star Infotech, as he grew it, they made a calculated bet. He essentially, as he became the leader of Blue Star Infotech, a calculated bet they made was to go buy a company in the United States that was in a certain amount of trouble called Infogain. They spent $10 million to buy this US company. They then did a reverse merger, so it became an American company called Infogain. And over the next many, many years, Sunil worked hard to grow the company's valuation and worth. And he grew it to over $1 billion and exited with a sale to a large private equity firm. So Sunil, I think, exemplifies the fact that we at SPJIMR also can create unicorns. We can turn $10 million investments into $1 billion investments. All it takes is a little bit of gumption and a little bit of willingness to innovate and to take risks. All right. So with that, I'd like to welcome Sunil to the stage.
Hey, good evening. Starting from Ritu to Rajesh, seeing all the winners, it really is humbling. And thank you to our dean, thank you to the faculty, thank you to all the jury committee members and 15,000 people have passed. And if you are the first two getting distinguished award, it really is, feels good, feels really humbling and feels very, very good. So thank you for that. I will probably just go back, in the query which Rajesh and Varun were talking, and let me first start. I almost didn't make it to SPJN. I know not many people probably don't know this story. I think I mentioned it to Varun and to Renuka, Professor Renuka last time, but I was not among the top 50, those days the batch used to be 50, so I was not in the top 50 who got in. And I was in the second list or maybe third list, I'm not even sure. Ramesh, who was in my batch, he was probably the topper, and he's right there from the 89 batch. And there were many, many other toppers and many, many smart people, but I was not in that first batch. So I used to come and sit outside. Those days it used to be above the chemistry lab. So for the first 2 weeks, I used to come and sit outside for an hour or so and just ask, "Aaj number aaya kya?" Right? So so that's how. And I think I was the fourth or the person, when 4 people drop out, and I had got into Symbiosis, and I didn't want to go to Symbiosis. I was like, if I don't do this, next year I'll try for IMA, and that was it, right? But like the luck would have it, I got in. So just to tell you, that's not very smart, but the learning for me for that was that, persevere, right? And I think Alok mentioned, or somebody mentioned that, which is, I'll tell you in Shah Rukh Khan's word, right? Sache dil se kuch chaho to पूरी कायनात मिल जाती है आपको मिलाने के लिए, right? So it was something to that effect is what happened, and that that stood with me for the rest of my life, because I knew perseverance therefore is very, very important, right? So you have to show up for it, and then I come here. Now just a little quick background about me that I came from a rich family but lost the wealth very early, and I lost my dad when I was very young. So then grew up in hardships and stuff like that. So didn't go to an engineering school, couldn't go to engineering school, worked through college and all of that. So all that learning was those days there used to be a Navneet books used to come out called 21 questions, right? So I did my commerce in 21 questions because I worked through the college, and last some, and thankfully I must have been good because I aced. I had very, very good marks in college. So academically, I was okay. But then when I come to SPJN, and thanks to all the professors, and professors probably may not appreciate all the impact that they have on you, right? But there are two very big things from the professors and from the people like Naimesh and everybody else who was in my cohort. I learned how to learn, right? So the most important learning in the SPJN that happened to me was I learned how to learn, and then the whole the desire to learn more was really formed there. Rajesh talked about frameworks, and I learned a lot of frameworks. I learned a lot of. I didn't know at that time to call it a mental models, but later on in life realized that they really are mental models, right? So the whole desire to learn was ignited, and how to learn was really ignited at SPGN. And then, once that happened, I just didn't stop. I frankly went to Wharton for 3 weeks. I went to IIM Ahmedabad. I went to INSEAD. Went to a business school in China. I just kept, and big mantra that I developed later on in life is called, be a learning machine in a machine learning age, right? I coined that about 10 years ago, right? So, just you have to be a learning machine, right? If you're not learning, and I think Jean and Rajesh were talking about, if you're not learning, you will go behind, right? And in this life of just not corporate life or whatever entrepreneur life, but just as a life, right? And when I was looking at Ramki's this thing, it reminded me of this. Yes, stars are in the heaven, but then there are stars are also on the ground, right? So what Ramki has achieved clearly is, he obviously went through this whole learning in his own mind at different stages, right? Which then took him to where it took him, right? It just cannot only be the passion and desire, right? It also has to be that burning thing that took him to the next stage, right? So so that was the second thing which came out when I was at SPJN. And then I was reflecting as I was hearing them talk. I was reflecting, okay, then. So what was my mantra? The mantra that I developed, and Rajesh was teaching. I also I was at Accenture, so obviously I used to teach. But there are 2-3 things I learned. One was that I learned, the logic of speaking and writing is absolutely crucial, and this I learned at Accenture very early on. And my first report at Accenture was, the partner took it and threw it in a dustbin, literally, I kid you not. And here I am, SPG, and I pass out, and strategy, this, that, etc. He said, his words were, content is there, but the logic is not there, right? And so that then gets you into thinking, my God, right? There's a senior partner in a very, very established American firm now telling you that content is there, but the logic is not there, right? So then that's taught me logic of thinking and writing. How do you actually put your ideas, complex ideas, in a very simple way so that you can sell, and storytelling and all of that, right? So that came out as a learning. And then over time, I developed a formula in life which was called 2H, 4E, 2P. And 2H was I'll always be an honest person. Second H was I'll always be a happy person, right? And in the life में छोटा मोटा किसका होता है यार, माफ किया यार. And I would tell them also, maaf kiya, right? I'll actually forgive you, right? So and then just move on with life. And then, 4E was, first E was I'll always have energy. Second E is that, I will energize others. Third E was that I will, build an edge and mastery onto something. And fourth E was that I will go and learn to execute. And my 2 P's one was passion, and last P was the one I learned at SPJM, which was perseverance, right? So that was my formula, which I came out with this thing. And just on a business side, I've come back and we've done this thing with Manoj is leading the effort for the startup hub, but I wanted to be an entrepreneur and I could not be an entrepreneur. I mean, I didn't know how to be an entrepreneur, and I was struggling to be an entrepreneur and all of that stuff, right? And then I decided to leave IBM, then go to the US, and then went to Accenture and left Accenture again. I worked in Accenture twice. And then left Accenture and said, I will do an entrepreneurship. So I actually came to Blue Star, and Blue Star was valued at $10 million at that point, a little more than 10. And I came in and I put my money with, my wife is here with me, and she was really the, wind behind, and she was the life partner there, because, you make decisions like this. I was 40 years old, 2011, 41, and I came back and said, honey, here's a house, fully paid for house, few $1 million, but everything else I'm taking away, and I'm going to put it and go and buy a business out, right? So I went and bought part of the business and had an understanding with the Blue Star family that if I do well, I should be able to buy the whole business out. So I did really well. The business did very well in 2015, and this is really important. Was the business was valued at that time? We could have bought $93 million. So in 5 years' time, the valuation was done really well, and I could have just taken my share. And I'm out and out gambler, so Rita and I had invested a lot of money, so I already had a double-digit stake in the business at that particular point of time. So we would have taken the money out with all the wealth anyway that we had. We would have left a very good life. But then we sat down and said, is this fine, or do we now take it to the next level? And that's when I said, no, we'll take it to the next level. So I bought that business out, got another private equity, and went and bought a company called Infogain and reverse merged Infogain. Total valuation of the business was 93 million at that particular point of time in January of 2016. And then we built it into the top 25 companies in the world in the services space. It's with Accenture, IBM, Deloitte, KPMG. Infogain is in that list of services providers known worldwide from that perspective. And we sold it for $1 billion. Again, I didn't sell all my stake. Sold enough stake so that Rita and I can retire and do whatever we want, but still kept a big stake going in this. And the learning from that was that yes, you take risk, yes, you grow, but when to exit is also equally important. So that became a big part. But none of this would have been possible if the desire to learn and desire to be here with all the professors. And so thank you for all of you. You probably do not appreciate all the work that you do for your students and the impressions that you leave on people like us. And thank you again. This award means a lot. As Tarun said, when you get so many awards in life, right, and then accomplished all this, but for your alma mater to come and say, pat on your back, as Ritu also was saying, I think acha lagta hai. It's very good. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.